The atmosphere in the CNN debate studio was intense tension, so heavy it felt like it could snap. Under the bright studio lights, two of the country's most talked about political figures sat face to face, preparing for what would turn out to be the most unexpected political face-off of 20 to 5. Karoline Leavitt, 27-year-old former White House press secretary, now running for Congress, sat calmly in her signature navy blazer. Blonde hair was neatly styled, and her sharp eyes reflected the drive that once made her Trump's youngest spokesperson. Opposite her sat Kash Patel, the 45-year-old former FBI director nominee and son of Indian immigrants. He adjusted his tie with the quiet focus of someone who had spent years in the intelligence field. What happened in the next 30 seconds sent a shock through the country and changed both of their political paths permanently. "Mr. Patel," Leavitt began, her voice carrying that same firm tone that had gained her national attention during press briefings. "Acting like you understand American values and went back to India where you belong." The words dropped into the room like a grenade. The studio audience gasped. CNN's Anderson Cooper widened his eyes in disbelief. Soon after, social media would label it the most openly racist comment ever spoken live by a major political figure. But what came next from Kash Patel? No one was prepared for it. His reply did not just end Leavitt's political ambitions, it revealed something about America that left millions stunned. Before we break down this moment, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you do not miss any of the political stories we cover. What happens next is something you need to see. This debate was not just another shouting match on television. It became a defining moment where America's deeper issues met its highest values. Live for all to witness. By the time it ended, one career was shattered, another was redefined. And a nationwide conversation had begun about what being American really means. To understand how it came to this point, we need to look at who these two figures really are. Why this debate held such weight for the future of the country? At just 27, Karoline Leavitt had already climbed to a place in politics that few reach in a lifetime. Born and raised in New Hampshire in a working-class Catholic home, she grew up with values rooted in hard work and conservative beliefs. After finishing her degree at St. Anselm College, she joined the Trump administration's communications team at only 24 years old. Leavitt quickly gained attention for her strong defense of Trump. Her youth, sharp tone, and loyalty made her a favorite among right-leaning media. When Trump needed a tough press secretary who could handle aggressive questions without backing down, he made Leavitt the youngest to ever hold that position in U.S. history. But her rapid rise did not come without backlash. Critics labeled her Trump's attack dog, pointing to a history of bold, often controversial remarks and her readiness to defend Trump at all costs. Her supporters, however, saw her as a bold new voice, someone young, outspoken, and unafraid. To confront the mainstream media, after leaving the White House, Leavitt launched her run for Congress in New Hampshire's 1st District. Her campaign centered on America First policies and traditional conservative values. She aimed to be the face of the next wave of Republican leadership, the one to carry on Trump's legacy. Kash Patel's story was quintessentially American. That is how Patel's story could be described, even though Leavitt tried to use it against him. Born to Indian immigrants who moved to the United States in the 1970s, Patel grew up in New York watching his father juggle several jobs to support the family. His parents came to America with no money, only high hopes, and a relentless work ethic, values that deeply shaped Patel's path. He did well in school, earned a law degree, and steadily rose through the ranks of the Department of Justice. A prosecutor, he tackled major criminal threats, going after drug networks and terrorists, often putting himself at risk to protect the country he had grown up in. When Trump entered office, Patel became one of his most trusted national security advisors. During his time in the Trump administration, Patel gained a reputation for being smart, dependable, and efficient. He was heavily involved in counter-terror operations and played a major role in uncovering what Trump claimed was a deep state plot against his presidency. Trump had so much faith in Patel that he nominated him to head the FBI, a move that was immediately criticized by Democrats who believed Patel's loyalty to Trump was too strong. But unlike many others in politics, Patel had actually put his life on the line for the United States. He had worked on covert operations, faced direct threats from terrorist groups, and spent years protecting American interests from behind the ad scenes. His record in public service was solid, but for some people, his Indian background made him a target anyway. This CNN debate was about more than just two politicians. It was happening during a critical point in American political life when debates over immigration, cultural identity, and patriotism were dividing the public. Leavitt, that stood for a segment of the conservative base that believed America was losing its traditional roots. She voiced concerns held by millions who felt the nation was changing too quickly and that core values were under threat. To them, only those with deep American family histories could truly understand the country's direction. Patel, however, symbolized a different idea, the American dream realized. He was living proof that immigrants could be loyal, committed patriots. His story showed that loving America had little to do with ancestry and everything to do with sacrifice and service. This CNN debate was supposed to focus on national security, a subject where both had experience. Leavitt had served as Trump's spokesperson during key global events, while Patel had been directly involved in top-level decisions impacting American safety. But as soon as the cameras were rolling and the questions started, it became obvious that this debate would go beyond policy. It would become a conversation about what America stands for. CNN had marketed the debate as a glimpse into the future of Republican politics. Featuring two rising stars with competing visions, they expected a heated exchange, but no one was. Prepared for how intense it would become, the stage was ready. Two driven politicians, each representing a different vision of America, facing off under the spotlight. One would walk away stronger. The other would lose everything because of their own words. What followed would force Americans to take a hard look at some deep issues. The debate started out normally. Anderson Cooper, CNN's seasoned anchor, opened with questions on border policy and national defense-safe topics for both candidates. For the first 20 minutes, Leavitt and Patel shared their ideas smoothly. Leavitt pushed for tougher immigration laws and criticized the Biden administration for not protecting the southern border. "We need leaders who put America first," she said with confidence. "Our citizens deserve to know their government is working for them, not for people who have no right to be here." Patel answered in his usual steady tone, focusing on details and drawing from his personal background in law enforcement. "I have spent my career actually going after criminals," he said calmly. "I have gone undercover to fight drug traffickers and terrorist threats. I know what real danger looks like, and I know when it is just politics." Tension rose when Cooper asked about immigration enforcement under the Trump administration. Leavitt quickly went on the offensive, claiming that some officials under Trump had not been strict enough. "We need leaders who really understand what America stands for," she said, glancing sharply at Patel. "People whose loyalty to this country is beyond question." Patel lifted an eyebrow, but kept his cool. "I think my service record speaks for itself," he replied. I have risked my life for this country more than once. I have helped put terrorists behind bars and worked to keep Americans safe. If that is not loyalty, then I am not sure what is." But Leavitt was not backing away. She had entered the debate with a clear strategy, and she was determined to follow through no matter what it cost. "It is easy to talk about loyalty," she replied quickly. "But real Americans do not have to prove their patriotism. It is part of who they are." The term real Americans hung in the air like a warning. Anderson Cooper shifted in his seat, clearly sensing the conversation was moving into risky territory. In the control room, CNN producers were growing concerned about where things were heading. Patel's jaw tightened just slightly, but his tone remained calm. "Ms. Leavitt," he said, I hope you are not implying that being American depends on your family background instead of your values and service." Leavitt answered, her voice sharper now, "That some people just understand this country naturally, others have to read about it to figure it out." There were murmurs in the audience. The exchange had become personal, and everyone could feel the tension building. On social media, people were already taking sides. Hashtags like #RealAmericans and #ImmigrantPride were starting to trend. Cooper tried to steer things back to the topic of border security, asking for more details on specific policies. But Leavitt had sensed an opening and was not going to let it pass. She had clearly decided that questioning Patel's right to represent American values was the best way to win. Mr. Patel speaks well about what it means to be American, she continued. But when it really matters, where is his loyalty? When he looks in the mirror, does he see an American or does he see something else? The room went silent. This was no longer a debate about policy, had turned into an attack on Patel's very identity and place in America. Cooper looked visibly stunned, unsure if he should step in or let it unfold. Viewers who supported Patel felt a familiar disappointment. They had seen this pattern before, when someone with immigrant roots was made to feel they could never truly belong, no matter how much they gave. Yet Patel himself stayed composed, almost unnaturally so. He looked directly at Leavitt with the same steady gaze that had once unsettled terrorists in interrogation rooms. "Miss Leavitt," he said quietly, "you should think carefully about the path you are choosing to take." Leavitt either missed the caution in his words or chose to ignore it. She had committed to her strategy and she was not turning back. "Mr. Patel, I respect your service in government," she said. "But there is a difference between serving this country and truly understanding it. Some of us are born with that understanding." She paused. "Others," she said slowly, "will always be trying to prove they belong." The message was clear even if she had said it politely. Leavitt was making it known, no matter how much Patel had done. His immigrant background meant he could never be fully accepted as American. Patel gave a small nod. "Yeah." As if he had been waiting for this all along. "I see," he said calmly. "So you believe that being American is about bloodline, not about action or commitment. That is a surprising view from someone who says they support constitutional principles." "I believe," Leavitt answered, her voice louder now, "that America should be led by people who never have to explain their loyalty because it has never been in doubt." The crowd was now visibly divided. Some cheered for Leavitt's boldness. Others shifted in their seats, clearly unsettled by the way the conversation had turned. Meanwhile, Estelle was getting live updates through his earpiece. CNN's leadership was debating whether they should cut to a commercial break or let this continue. The moment continued to build. Then Patel did something unexpected. Instead of getting upset or defensive, he smiled. It was a calm, assured smile that hinted he was in control and that he knew something others in the room did not. "Miss Leavitt," he said, his voice shifting slightly, "since you want to talk about who truly belongs in America, let me share a story. It is about my family and yours. And by the end of it, I think everyone watching will have a clearer idea of who actually has the right to question someone else's loyalty to this country." For a brief moment, Leavitt's self-assurance faded. There was something in Patel's tone that suggested he had not only expected this line of attack, but had come prepared for it, you see. Patel went on, his voice firmer now. "I have spent years in intelligence. I know how to find the truth. I know how to dig into people's records. And before coming here tonight, I looked into your background, Ms. Leavitt. What I found was very interesting." The studio fell completely silent. Even the camera operators stood still. Everyone in the room could feel something major was about to unfold. Leavitt's expression shifted. She had not expected Patel to push back with research of his own. "I do not know what you think you discovered," she said, but her voice lacked its earlier strength. Patel's smile grew a little wider. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I found," he replied. "But don't worry, I plan to share it with everyone." That was the moment when Kash Patel revealed something that would change the course of the debate. He leaned forward in his chair, folding his hands as he prepared to make one of the most powerful political counterattacks in recent memory. "Ms. Leavitt," he began again, with the steady tone of someone who had spent years briefing national leaders. "You told me to go back to India. You said I am not a real American. You questioned my loyalty to this country." He paused, giving the audience time to absorb the seriousness of those words. "But before we talk about who really belongs in America, I want to share some facts. I think the American people deserve that." Leavitt shifted in her seat, her earlier confidence fading as she began to realize Patel was not going to quietly accept her remarks. "You see," Patel continued, "when you work in national security, You verify everything. So when I learned I would be debating you tonight, I did what any good analyst would do. I checked the facts about both of our families. He pulled a folder from inside his jacket. This is all public information. Anyone can find it. Suspect: most people have never heard the real story of the Leavitt family. The cameras focused on the folder as Patel opened it with care. CNN producers behind the scenes were debating whether to intervene, but ratings were soaring and viewers across the country knew they were witnessing something unforgettable. Let's begin with my family, Patel said. My parents arrived in the U.S. in 1970 with nothing but determination. My father worked 3 jobs: a taxi driver by day, a security guard at night, and a janitor on weekends. My mother cleaned offices and took care of other people's children. His voice remained calm, but carried a deep sense of emotion. They did not ask for handouts. They did not expect anything. They believed in the American dream that if you work hard, you can build a future. He looked directly at Leavitt. My father never accepted government assistance. He never asked for anything from this country. He worked, saved, and paid for my education with money earned through honest labor. The room stayed quiet. Even those who supported Leavitt were listening closely now. When I became old enough to serve, Patel went on, I did not hesitate. I became a prosecutor and sent criminals to jail. I worked undercover to stop drug trafficking and terrorism. I put my life at risk for operations I still cannot talk about because they are classified. He paused, his eyes locked on Leavitt. I have been shot at by terrorists. I have been threatened by drug cartels. I have spent nights overseas knowing that if I were caught, I might not survive. All to keep Americans safe. The emotion in his voice was rising steadily. So when Ms. Leavitt questions my loyalty to America, when she tells me to return to India, it is not just an insult aimed at MIT, it is a slight against every immigrant family that has ever worked hard for this country. She is dismissing every American whose parents arrived here hoping for a better future. Some applause started to build in the audience, but Patel raised his hand to quiet them. I am not finished, he said. It's because the most revealing part is not about my family. It is about hers. Leavitt's face turned pale. She had clearly not seen this coming. Patel opened a folder and pulled out some papers. You see, he continued, Ms. Leavitt often presents herself as a true American, someone whose roots in this country run deep. Her political image relies heavily on claiming she represents traditional American ideals. He held up the first document. But according to public records, the Leavitt family arrived in the United States in 1892. That means Karoline Leavitt is a third-generation immigrant. It's just like millions of others. A low murmur spread through the crowd. This was clearly not what they expected. But here's where it gets particularly interesting, Patel said, shifting into a tone that felt more like a courtroom than a studio. The Leavitt family came to the United States from, believe it or not, Canada. Let the silence linger for a moment. That is right. The same person who told me to go back to India is herself a descendant of Canadian immigrants who came here for better opportunities. The reaction in the room grew louder. Some chuckled. Others simply looked stunned at the contrast. But that is not all, Patel said, now clearly in control of the moment. Immigration records show that Karoline's great-grandfather, Thomas Leavitt, was denied entry into the United States twice before being accepted on his 3rd try. Leavitt tried to cut in. This is absurd. You cannot compare. Oh, I absolutely can, Patel said smoothly, not missing a beat. Because here's the reason Thomas Leavitt was denied. U.S. immigration authorities doubted his ability to support himself. He had no savings, no job lined up, and no promises of income. He looked straight into the camera. In other words, Thomas Leavitt was exactly the kind of immigrant that his great-granddaughter now wants to block from entering this country. There was a noticeable shift in the crowd. Some were clapping, others were stunned, and a few looked uncomfortable. Patel continued, unshaken. But here's my favorite part of the Leavitt family's story. Thomas Leavitt's final successful immigration attempt. It was made possible by an Indian-American businessman, someone who had built his success in the textile industry. The room quieted again. The significance of that detail settled over the audience. Yes, Patel said with calm intensity. Karoline Leavitt's family was only able to make it to America because an Indian immigrant helped them. That man stood up for her great-grandfather and gave him a chance. He turned toward Leavitt directly. So, when you tell me to go back to India, you are speaking to a descendant of the very person who helped your own family get here and build a life. We share the same country and your family's story is linked to mine more closely than you want to admit. Even some of Leavitt's supporters in the room began to look unsure. The irony was impossible to miss, but Patel still had more to say. "Ms. Leavitt," he said, now speaking with the weight of someone who had spent years in public service. "You want to talk about who counts as a real American? Let me tell you what real Americans do." He stood up, commanding the space around him. Real Americans do not judge others by their background or the country their grandparents came from. They judge people based on who they are, what they do, and how they serve others. His voice grew firmer. Real Americans do not tell other Americans to go back, especially when their own families came here from somewhere else as well. Pointed straight at Leavitt. Real Americans do not make their careers by dividing people or spreading hate. They build their lives by uniting communities and serving the nation. The crowd responded in waves, some standing, others clapping, and many visibly moved by what they had just heard. Many in the crowd were now on their feet, clapping with energy. Even a few of the camera crew nodded in support. Do you want to know what truly separates us, Miss Leavitt?" Patel asked, his voice now echoing across the studio. "My family arrived in America with nothing and gave everything to help this country. Your family also arrived here with nothing, but apparently passed down a sense of superiority over others who came here the same way." He paused for a moment, letting that point settle. "I have spent my entire adult life working for this country as a federal prosecutor, in intelligence, and in public service. You, on the other hand, have spent your time serving Donald Trump and chasing your own political goals." The contrast between them was clear and cutting. "So, before you question someone else's loyalty to this nation again," Patel continued, now speaking softly, but his words carried through the room, "look in the mirror and ask yourself, what have you actually done to improve this country?" He sat down, calmly folded his hands, and turned to Anderson Cooper. "I believe you had a question about border security?" The audience burst into loud applause. Even a few members of the CNN staff were clapping. Leavitt stayed in her seat, her face flushed with both embarrassment and frustration, clearly at a loss for words. Cooper, ever professional, tried to bring the debate back on track. But the audience and the moment belonged entirely to Patel. He had just delivered what many would later call one of the most impactful political rebuttals in recent history. Using Leavitt's own background to highlight the inconsistency in her statements as the applause slowly faded, Patel looked into the camera and stated, "America is strong because we open our doors to those who are ready to work hard and give back, no matter where they come from. That is what sets us apart from the rest of the world. And anyone trying to separate us based on our background clearly does not understand what this country is really about." His message was firm, sincere, and deeply American. In that brief moment, Kash Patel did not just win an argument. He reminded millions of Americans what their identity truly stands for. The reaction afterward was swift. And unlike anything CNN had experienced before, within seconds of Patel's closing remarks, social media lit up. Before Anderson Cooper could even close the segment, hashtags like #CashDestroysCaroline had already taken over. Twitter's trending list clips of the exchange spread faster than the platform could handle. Conservative pundit Ben Shapiro, rarely one to compliment outside his own side, tweeted, "I have never witnessed a more direct and effective rebuttal. Kash Patel just showed everyone the real meaning of American values." Even liberal commentator Van Jones, a frequent critic of those aligned with Trump, posted, "I disagree with Patel on policy, but what he just said was the essence of American ideals. Sometimes truth speaks louder than party lines." Memes began circulating instantly. One showed Patel seated calmly with his folder while Leavitt appeared rattled. The caption, "When you bring talking points to a fact-based debate." Another featured the Statue of Liberty, giving a thumbs up with the line, Immigrants have been challenging ignorance since 1886. But the most meaningful reactions were not jokes. They were personal stories. Thousands of people shared their own family immigration journeys, many beginning with, "My family came here from ... followed by accounts of hard work, sacrifice, and deep appreciation for the country they now called home. The political impact was swift and wide-reaching. Within hours, key Republican leaders were forced to take a stand, exposing sharp divides. Within the party itself, Senator Ted Cruz, whose own father was an immigrant, tweeted, "Kash Patel just gave us all a reminder. True conservative values are about character, not family origin. Service is greater than ancestry." Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, trying to tread carefully, wrote, "Legal immigrants who share our values and contribute to this nation have always made America stronger." But the most unexpected reaction came from ... Donald Trump, who is often known for standing by his team, found himself in a tough spot. Leavitt had been one of his most loyal supporters, but Patel was also a trusted member of his circle. His reaction, shared on Truth Social 3 hours after the debate, was, as usual, unexpected. Kash Patel is a true American and a real patriot. He served in our administration with respect and commitment. Some people still need to learn the difference between putting America first and thinking it is the only one that matters. We welcome legal immigrants who care deeply about our country. Most took this as Trump distancing himself from Leavitt and backing Patel, a surprising shift from someone known to defend his allies. Almost without question, the major media struggled to process the moment. Fox News, which usually supports Trump-aligned voices like Leavitt, found itself in a strange position. Tucker Carlson, known for his controversial comments about immigration, surprised many with his take the following night. "Kash Patel did was not just good TV," Carlson said. "It was a lesson in real American values. When you are criticized for where you come from, you should not respond with anger. You answer with facts, with your service, and with calm. That is how you win." CNN's debate ratings reached record highs, making it the most-watched political event in the network's history. Anderson Cooper reflected on the event the next day, saying, "In 3 decades of journalism, I have never seen a moment like that. Kash Patel turned what could have been a dividing point into something that brought people together as Americans. Even international media covered it." The BBC's headline read, "American debate shows how immigrants often better understand democracy than those born in the country." The Times of India proudly reported, "Indian American shows America how to win with grace." For Karoline Leavitt, the aftermath was politically devastating. By the next morning, 3 major donors had withdrawn their support for her congressional campaign. Her campaign manager quit, citing key differences in approach and message. New Hampshire Republican Party, which had previously backed her, released a carefully worded statement to distance themselves. The New Hampshire Republican Party believes that American values are shaped by character and service, not by heritage. Even more damaging were the resignations from her own team. Her communications director, press secretary, and deputy campaign manager all stepped down within 48 hours. Some openly said their own immigrant backgrounds played a role in their decisions. Leavitt tried to manage the fallout through several tweets and a quickly organized press event, but it had little effect. Her explanation that her words were taken out of context did not convince anyone, especially since the entire clip was publicly available. "I never meant to imply that Mr. Patel is not American," she said during the press conference. "Just trying to point out the difference between people who grow up understanding American culture naturally and those who have to learn it out." But this only made things worse. Critics noted she was still suggesting that some Americans were more authentic than others based on where their families came from. Meanwhile, for Kash Patel, the debate changed everything. Once a respected but little-known government official, he was now seen as a conservative figure of national importance. Requests to speak came from across the country. Publishers offered him book deals. Political consultants even began talking about him running for higher office, but perhaps his biggest achievement was something rare in today's politics. He brought people together across party lines around shared American values. Political science professors began using his debate moment as a case study in how to respond to personal attacks with strength and dignity. Experts in public communication praised his command of facts, his emotional honesty, and his ability to turn a tense moment into a positive, unifying message. The debate's effects went far beyond just Patel and Leavitt. His response opened up a national conversation about immigration and American identity, one that many leaders had long tried to avoid. Immigration advocacy groups quickly highlighted Patel's remarks as a strong example of how immigrants can sometimes hold a deeper respect for American values than those who grow up with them. Conservative organizations found themselves in a rare spot supporting an immigration view focused more on contribution than on restriction. The debate brought out the complex nature of identity in modern America. Millions of people connected, both with Patel's journey as an immigrant success and Leavitt's emphasis on traditional American ideals. This forced a deeper conversation about what being American truly means. In the months after the debate, political experts saw it as a key shift in how conservatives speak about immigration and identity. The older method of drawing a line between us and them no longer worked when the them included someone like Kash Patel, someone who had clearly given more to America than many of those doubting his loyalty. Republican primary candidates across the country started being asked what became known as the Patel question: how they would handle criticism aimed at legal immigrants who would serve the country with honor. The debate also signaled the decline of Leavitt's political run. She later stepped down from her congressional campaign, citing personal reasons, though most understood that her chances were effectively over after what had happened on stage. Perhaps the most lasting impact of the debate was the message it gave. About American values today, Patel's reply reminded the nation that its true strength comes from welcoming those who are ready to work hard and give back to society. Regardless of their background, his composed and factual response to a racially charged comment proved that the best way to challenge hate is not with shouting or bitterness, but with truth, dignity, and a firm belief in what America truly stands for. One tweet that spread widely captured the feeling: Kash Patel just showed America how to stand your ground without losing your values. Patel's moment on stage did not just end Leavitt's campaign, it became a model for how to face division when it is rooted in race or background. In the end, the debate showed that America's greatest power is not in its weapons or economy. It lies in its ability to turn people from all parts of the world into proud Americans, so long as they are ready to live by American values and help build a better country. If this moment moved you like it moved so many others, be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this video. This kind of leadership and love for country is exactly what we need more of. Tell us in the comments how you felt about Patel's strong response, and do not forget to check out our other videos about real heroes helping shape America's future. The key takeaway was clear. In America, your value does not depend on your ancestors, it depends on your actions and your service. And sometimes, it takes the child of immigrants to remind the rest of us what being American truly means.